Well, good morning, and welcome to Tuesday Morning Law Talk with Clay Williams of FH&P Lawyers, as we spend at least the next half hour, sometimes it's longer, but we spend time talking about law in the province of BC and in the various facets of. But this week is Law Week, and started yesterday, goes right through to Friday. It started with the Canadian Bar Association, and the first Law Week in this country was held in 1983. But it continues to this day, and tomorrow is Law Day, if you will. Wednesday, April the 19th, is Law Day. And events are held right across British Columbia in the month of April, and we'll talk with Clay Williams about some of that. Mr. Williams, good morning to you.
Good morning, Phil.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Yes.
In a week that we celebrate as opposed to disparage.
Oh, come on, Phil. Let's be nice this
resist morning. As we celebrate lawyers and celebrate the legal profession all week long, with tomorrow being Law Day in the province of BC. And it is, as I understand this, done in conjunction with the signing of Canada's Charter Rights and Freedoms, which 50 years ago we celebrated. I heard some news coverage in Gord Vizuti's News the other day, talking about the anniversary of the signing of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But the Canadian Bar Association Law Day celebrating 35 years. As a young pup lawyer with just a little gray in your beard, I'm just sort of in that.
You're in the zone this morning,
I'm in the
aren't
zone
you?
this morning.
Hey, but I'll take young anytime. That's great. So.
Young guy with a little gray in his beard.
A little gray, wow.
So I want to start out by saying, what moved you to become a lawyer?
You know, I always had that interest in mind, and it was always in the back of my mind. But I was one of those people that went to university, and kind of took me a while to figure it out. But
stumbled around at university, sort of in a broad a Bachelor of Arts, a BA program, just sort of sample a little of this and a little of that and a little of this, and then you finally figured it out.
That's exactly it. And then you have to apply to get into law school in your third year, and I did that, and I got in, and I just haven't looked back. It's been a great career, and we talked a little bit about careers before we got on the air this morning. And the getting a law degree is a great opportunity. I mean, you don't just have to be a lawyer. You can also work in other fields as well. It's a great training for a lot of things. And remember that the law itself is a huge profession. And so for those people who don't like people, there's things for you. For those people who like to be in the courtroom and that excitement, there's that as well. Great, absolutely great career. So. Well,
we all have the sort of the one image of law and lawyers, and most of that is generated by the Good Wife, or now what's the offshoot? It doesn't matter, but for so many of us, our image of lawyers and law and the courtroom is driven by the evening television docudramas or the evening shows, and in so many cases, you're looking at American law and American courtrooms that have no relevance or even connection to the way things are done. And so I think there's a lot of Canadians that really have a misunderstanding and a poor image of what it is that lawyers do and how they work.
Well, there's no doubt that the courtroom is the exciting part of the profession, and that's the part where the cross-examinations occur and introducing all the evidence. But certainly, there's a lot more. There's also documents need to be drafted, and there's things that need to be registered, and there's conveyances that need to be done. And so I'd say probably most lawyers don't go to court. There's probably I'm not sure the stat, but there's certainly a large number that'll never see a courtroom. So,
and I have to ask you, do you have a typewriter in the offices of FH&P? Because I had a conversation with a gentleman who was 81 years of age and who repairs typewriters.
Still?
At 81, he repairs typewriters, and I have this old Remington that I have cherished and treasured. It weighs a ton. It hurts me every time I pick it up. But we had a conversation about typewriters and the transition to word processors and so on. And he said, Phil, I'm going to tell you something. Most lawyers' offices have a typewriter, at least one typewriter in their offices, because there are documents that need to be prepared, that need to involve, insert here, and so on. They don't want a record, and our word processors and our computers today, no matter how well you think you've sanitized, erased, and removed, he said, I will tell you that most lawyers' offices have a typewriter in them for that express purpose.
He's absolutely right. We have one.
Yeah.
And he's right. Every now and then, a pre-printed document or a document that you download and you print out, you need to insert something. So he's absolutely right. There's one left.
Well, I had never thought of it, and as he, at 81 years of age, put forward this whole concept and this whole idea that in every law office there is a typewriter, because there are those documents that need to be prepared that they don't want a record of. And I thought, well, you know what that... And then he went on to say, and do you know that they still are manufacturing new typewriters, particularly in Europe at a couple of German factories, because there are all places in the world where there is no electricity, where your laptop will not work, where you can't use your cell phone, and things need to be typed and things need to be written out in the middle of the back of beyond in wherever.
Well, the one typewriter we have left is electric, so the power goes down and everything goes
he
down.
was talking about typewriters that are manual typewriters that travel the world.
Wow.
Because there are still many, many places that you can go in the world where you need to use a typewriter and there is no electricity. And
it isn't our office. I can tell you, when the power goes down, everybody stands around and looks at each other. There's not much left to do.
So let's just start with Law Week, because it is a week to celebrate law and lawyers, courthouse tours, public education. Tomorrow is Law Day, where I think that lawyers are encouraged to engage with the public at large in general conversation. Where does all of this take us?
It's a time for the profession to showcase how important the judiciary and lawyers are in the province.
Never more so.
Exactly, and so we try and do things like there's the mock Girl Guide trial. Have you ever done that?
I have not.
Oh, it's quite fun. And so the Girl Guides come down and they get arrested and spend time in the cells and then brought up and have to go through a trial in court. So
the Girl Guides?
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
charged with unlicensed selling or retailer, whatever trumped up charge.
Usually there's some kind of a factual scenario involving Girl Guide cookies, of course.
Right, of course.
So they have a lot of fun with that, and they go through a kind of a mock trial.
When does that take place? Well, you know what? I'd love to head to the courtroom and settle in a corner and watch and listen, and then have one of the Girl Guides or a couple of them even come on and join us here at AM 1150. I think it would be fascinating to hear their take, to get their perspective on what they went through, and what it did to the appreciation of the law. The Girl Guide trials could be fascinating.
You know, there's also the Dial a Lawyer Day on April 16th, and then you get a chance to call in and speak with a lawyer for up to 15 minutes as well,
right,
for a free consultation. So it's a good time to get an opportunity to access
and for lawyers to do what they do, and have a somewhat of a more again, this is not meant in jest, but people have an image of lawyers as being cold, remote, unmoved, and so on. And I think that this sort of puts a more human face on, or attaches some warmer, gentler, kinder characteristics to the profession.
Oh, come on, Phil. Lawyers are people too. So, but this year, what's going on is that the Canadian Bar Association is bringing attention to the issue of access to justice. And access to justice is a topic that has been kicked around for some time, because lawyers are expensive, and hiring a lawyer to represent you through a case can be an expensive process. And so one of the things that has been brought to the fore this year is how can that be changed in order to bring perhaps smaller cases before the courts and in an economical fashion. And one of the things that lawyers are doing is unbundling legal services. And what that means is that and we get this all the time. We'll get clients, we'll get people calling us with a dispute, but that dispute isn't a one that involves a lot of money. But that's not to say it's not a really aggravating, irritating matter to a person. A person's been ripped off, perhaps. They've been somebody's come into their house to do some renovations. They've taken their money and left. Mm-hmm. Well, there needs to be a way to deal with that. And so, and lawyers have struggled with those type of cases because the amount of legal fees in proportion to the claim is often out of
proportion. Yeah.
So what the profession as a whole has been trying to do is unbundle services to assist behind the scenes to provide some.
So instead of having to have the full meal deal, you can have a smorgasbord. You can take a little of this and a little of that.
Exactly. So you can get some help where you need it, some help in filing the documents, some help in defining the case, some help in organizing the evidence, and if you need it, some help at trial. But try not to hire a lawyer through the whole case. So that's one of the things that we've seen some success. And the other is the other thing that's happening is that the government is bringing in a new procedure called the Civil Resolution Tribunal to deal with smaller matters. And so this will be new.
So is this over and above, or apart and separate from small claims court?
Well, historically, small claims court is how they've dealt with small matters. And again, when I say small matters, I don't mean I mean small in a monetary sense, because we all know how irritating it can be. We need an effective and simple and cheap system to deal with these type of disputes. Otherwise, people would fix them themselves. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So historically, the small claims court has been the place where you take those type of matters. But we've got the brick and mortar problem. So even if the claim is only a few $1,000s, again, very irritating to the person that's going through it, you've still got to go to a courthouse and go through and see a judge and have a staff there to deal with it. It's very expensive. And so,
very intimidating for an individual.
Well, maybe intimidating, but that intimidation factor isn't all that bad. I mean, you come into a courtroom and you see the big coat of arms and the judge is sitting up on a bench. Hey, that's designed to get the truth out. So it should be a little bit intimidating, I think. I think the small claims does a great job, but I think the government has thought it's expensive. How can we deal with these issues and in a different manner that maybe we don't have the brick and mortar? And that's what the civil.
So maintain the quality of the decision, maintain the quality of the discourse, but do it at a price that mom and pop or John and Mary Front Porch can afford to assume.
Well. And that'll be.
Did I misspeak?
We will see, because this is new. It's coming in on June 1,
right?
And so nobody knows, but you get what you pay for. So certain things have been found to be necessary during a dispute process, and one of those is hearing the side and getting an opportunity to ask that other side questions. This process. It doesn't sound like you're going to have that opportunity.
Okay. We're in conversation with Clay Williams. We've shifted from Law Week to this new aspect of the judicial process, if you will. It's called a Civil Resolution Tribunal, handling small disputes. It comes into effect on the 1st of June. Clay Williams will do a little more of an unveil, a little more understanding right after this break. Clay Williams. FH&P for Tuesday morning's Law Talk, as we spend time looking at the various facets and the ways that law is conducted, not only in British Columbia, indeed right across the country, but in this case it is predominantly about British Columbia. where there is a new civil resolution tribunal that is going to handle small disputes. It comes into effect, or is empowered to come into effect, on the 1st of June, and effectively has the potential to change how small disputes are settled overall. Clay, I would, without putting words in your mouth, I would believe that lawyers generally would be pleased with this new wrinkle or this new facet of law in BC.
Well, lawyers are concerned with access to justice.
Right.
And so having these small disputes dealt with is in everybody's interest, including lawyers. So it remains to be seen whether this process will assist with that. Because let me start by saying I think the provincial court, the small claims court, does a pretty darn good job. It may not be the best, but I think it's one of the best solutions to small problems that in the world.
When money is involved.
Well, even when money isn't involved, I mean, you don't need to hire a lawyer in small claims court. You can go and you can be self-represented,
right.
And the procedure is designed to be friendly to that, and the staff is really good at assisting you in filling out forms, and the judges are really good. But, again, you're in a courtroom, you are dealing with a judge, and these are expensive endeavors. So what the government's going to try is and they're advertising it as the world's first online dispute resolution system that's been put into place by a government. We'll see how it goes. And so what'll happen, and this is only for disputes under $5,000. And so you fill out your form, and in your form you actually list the evidence that you're going to bring, and you serve that on the other side. And the other side does the same thing, says, yes, I agree, or I'm willing to negotiate, and kind of lists the evidence. And so that's the first stage, is to try and work out a quick negotiated resolution. And those things happen. I mean, there's lots of times where a person says, well, I don't dispute that I owe you the money. I just don't have it right now. So that's a good way to start a negotiation. And if that doesn't work, then they'll try and facilitate a negotiation. And if that doesn't work, then, as I understand it, you write out your submissions and you send them in, and you upload your evidence, and a tribunal member will read both sides and make a decision. So
this tribunal member is a judge, or is a paralegal, is a smart and wise beyond their years? Like, who is the person who's reading my uploaded documentation and is ultimately going to make the decision?
Well, a tribunal member, and
right.
From what I can see of who's on that, they are lawyers,
right.
So they should be familiar with the dispute process. But what's missing there is the cross-examination, the ability to ask questions of your accuser, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how a tribunal member makes a decision. When one person says one thing and the other person says another thing, I mean, how do you break that impasse? And historically, it's been a judge who will get the chance to see the witnesses and hear how they respond.
The testimony.
And hear how they respond to questions. So that'll be an interesting decision or process. But you can see the attraction there. I mean, it's all done on the internet, and if you can't use the internet for whatever reasons, they can make exceptions and deal with a telephone as well. But they're trying to push it onto an online system.
Right.
So then they don't have, you don't have to travel they don't have to have a courtroom. They don't have to have, a lot of the costs.
And is that being driven just by virtue of the fact that the law is becoming more complex? The law is woven into more aspects of our lives. And so as that volume of material arrives in courtrooms, as that volume of material represented by lawyers arrives before judges, that they have to find some way to distribute, dispense, or to head off some of these actions before they ever get to a courtroom, because we really don't want them there.
Well, and I think that was well said. The heading off is exactly the way that I see the process, is trying to funnel some of these disputes out, because interestingly enough, and one of the problems the possible problems is that if you don't like the decision of the tribunal member, you can file a notice and then you'll go to small claims court and have a trial.
Right. So your notice of appeal will take you to some place where today you would have been automatically, now not so much.
Right. So what remains to be seen in my mind is if this just puts a bunch more steps into a process, or whether it actually takes a lot of the claims out of the system. We'll see.
Do you know if there is, we're going to do this for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, we're going to look at all of the cases that have been handled, the kind of judgments that have been made, how many of them then were taken to small claims court, how many of them were satisfactory based upon both parties, and so on. There must be some vetting process that will obviously occur. There must be a date for evaluation and continuation, or evaluation and let's get rid of the whole thing. It was a bad idea.
Well, if there is, they haven't told me. And very often they do exactly that. They'll try things and see how things work. And in fact, as part of the same announcement, when they announced the Civil Resolution Tribunal, they're going to try something called a simplified trial process in certain registries in the Lower Mainland, where they strip out a lot of the process. And so they're going to try that for a period of time. I can't remember how long that is, but then they'll evaluate it and see if it works, and then decide whether they want to implement it in a greater extent or not. This one, there's no indication that if there's an internal review, it's not something that we're told about.
And in the meantime, it stands to reason that from right across this country, other provinces, other jurisdictions are going to be watching closely to a British Columbia experiment. As you said, this is the first ever. This is the first time this has been done. So you got to know that other places in this country are going to be watching closely.
Well, and that's probably true. And I guess that the other thing I wanted to bring up is, maybe it's just me, but it seems like it's another government institution that's being put into place. And so we've got a system that works, but part of it's being taken out, and we're building another empire. And we'll see how that goes.
The growth of bureaucracy.
We'll see how that goes, because if the design here is to save money, well, now we've got tribunal members, now we've got staff, now we've got we'll see how that happens. And we've seen it in other places in the past where governments have taken certain things away from the courts, and it's just created a nightmare of bureaucracy. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
On a Tuesday morning, Clay Williams from FH&P. You might like to talk with him further. As a matter of fact, I know that there will be some of you who have been listening closely and will want to talk with him further. And you can find him by going to Google and typing in FH&P Lawyers or just FH&P. It'll get you to the homepage for FH&P, and you go to our team, and there's a drop-down menu there. And look at that. Right there in front of my eyes is Clay Williams. Sir, a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Phil.
Truly.
Until next time. Thank you.
Until next time. Actually, fascinating conversation. If you'd like to talk further with Clay Williams, he also can be found at the other end of his direct line. Yes, it's 250-869-6015. Back in a moment.